why it's best to use sound
when you're telling your
when
story.
you're telling your story.
Yeah, I mean, if you Google, if you can Google it. You know, Roy Williams talks about the spoken word versus the written word. The written word is great, you know, when you're telling a story.
Yeah.
But the most powerful way to tell your story would be kind of like what we're doing right here, just having a conversation through authenticity, right? Which is becomes cliche, but it's true. If you just tell your story in your words, in your way, you know, it's much more powerful than, I mean, a written word can really have an effect, right?
Yeah.
It can have an effect, but when you tell your story in your way, there's no actors, there's no scripts, there's no, you know, fancy post-production, there's no drones. It's just you telling your story in your way, with your mannerisms. That's what's going to connect you with the community. And the reason that it connects is, the meat of it is because of sound. And what sound does, sound is just so emotional. You know, it's in our DNA to connect. Humans connect through sound, right? So, and we have the scientific studies that say we react to emotion, we justify with logic later, we make our decisions emotionally, and logic comes second. And with sound being emotional, that's why we're able to make those connections.
I mean, sound equals passion, right?
Yeah.
People can feel the passion.
Yeah.
And I know, like, authenticity has become like a buzzword.
So is
But
storytelling, by the way.
So storytelling,
yeah.
but I mean, there's really no way to go about it, because people can sense if something's not real or authentic. Like, they could tell if a story is made up. For example, we always preach small businesses, the owner, the operator, the people in charge, the ones behind the business, they could tell if you're making it up or not. But I feel like that's how you beat the big box stores, because somebody that provides a similar service or a product, that's the difference between company A and company B. And if you have an audience that has that emotional connection with you, they're gonna follow you. The business change. Let's say they don't have a store anymore and they go 100% online. If you have a loyal audience, they're gonna follow you. Same goes with anything, any industry. That's how they beat the big box stores, because they're using their emotion, their passion, their authenticity to really connect with that community, and that's why we preach that so much.
Well, here's the way I like to think of it. And you're right. Your story is not like any other story, because there's no one in the world like you. So you are unique, and you should own that uniqueness, right? Then it's the same thing we preach all the time. It doesn't matter if we're selling hamburgers, trying to get patients for a doctor, or looking for new employees, or trying to retain employees. It's all the same. But if you are looking at your competition, that is a great way to separate yourself, your definable difference, through your story. And I always say this: look, let the big box stores have Wall Street. You know, your connections, your community is waiting to hear from you right here on Main Street. You have to speak to them. No fancy production needed. You don't need the drones flying all over the place. We don't need this post-production. We definitely don't want scripts.
Yeah.
We want the real you, or the real you meaning your team, or the real you meaning your patients. You don't coach your patients or your customers or your clients on what to say. You let them tell their story in their own way, because that's what's going to bring credibility. That's the authenticity.
You know what cracks me up? The theme of commercials I've been seeing on TV that make it seem like it's a real testimonial. I mean, they've been doing that for a long time, but now they've taken it to a whole nother level where it's like behind the scenes. I can't remember the the company that did this, but the woman that had the issue, I think it was a drug commercial, she was filming something. So it was like a behind the scenes of them making the commercial. Just so funny that they like really staged it when it's clearly
It's fake.
not her, you know,
Yeah.
running a movie.
But do they
It's
think we're
set up
stupid?
that way. Yeah, exactly.
They think everyone's stupid.
Like the paid testimonials from lawyers. It even has to say paid actor. Like
Yeah. I mean, you know, but, you know, people want real. That's how we connect, you know. That is how we connect.
They want to know that somebody actually tried that product, tried that service,
Yeah.
and what they're saying really reflects that company, especially if it's brand new.
Yeah.
I mean, the closest thing that you can get to a family member or friend really vouching for that service is a testimonial. Like, you might not know that person with watching and hearing, the person that went through that, but you see enough of that and you sense the realness behind that, where it's like, all right, yeah, I'll give it a shot. One example I feel like for me was So Right, which was for the psoas muscles.
Yeah.
And like, I heard about it. I think it was like the Joe Rogan podcast. Can't really remember my entire journey of how I purchased it, but I watched enough social videos of people explaining how it helped with their back pain that I'm like, I'm willing to give it a try, because it wasn't cheap.
Mm-hmm.
But I watched enough, and I'm like, okay, this seems to be the real deal right here. I'll give this a shot. And it was organic style videos of just regular people.
Just telling them?
Yeah, just showing you how to use it, what you need to do. Because like by itself, you look at this product and like, what the heck does this do? I'm supposed to lay on this thing?
That's the thing I have.
Yeah.
That's that. Yes, I use it every day.
Yeah, and it's a game changer. And I don't think I would have tried that product just because Joe Rogan said it. It was a journey that I can't even remember, right? I mean, it's so hard to figure out all the different touch points with the marketing journey, but I know from a series of watching what it's done for other people and hearing how it's changed their lives, I'm like, okay, I'm willing to give this a try.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm happy with that, because I know how to actually use it. Like I said, I was watching enough social videos where people just doing it on their own with their smartphone and showing exactly like how-to videos. So there was the education part of that, but also their own testimonial built into that.
Here's what I think how we can help small business operators is with this message, right? The ad nauseum, right? They've heard it from all of us. Your story is really important, and be authentic story. But what's the correct way to do that? You know, how do you tell your story? And that's where we explain that you don't need all the fancy high-end drones, scripts, post-production. That's where it just becomes you and your story and your words in your way. And that's the correct way to tell your story, is to utilize the power and persuasion of sound and your human voice. There's a couple, for those in Buffalo, they know, well, the late Rick Jeanneret now, right? So Rick Jeanneret had the greatest play-by-play call, I believe, in sports history.
Can I guess it? Mayday?
Yeah, Mayday is the greatest sports call ever.
It's
you know.
amazing.
So Mayday is the 1990s, and they're in the, it's a playoff, it's overtime, it's a game clinching. I think they actually swept the Bruins. Then they went on to lose to the Canadiens in the next round. But Brad May, who's not a big goal scorer, so the written word would say, I remember
Right.
every word of it, but here's May. If you were to read it off a script, you would say, here's May going in on goal. He shoots, he scores. And Mayday, 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 Mayday. Brad May wins it in overtime, which that's pretty powerful and pretty emotional if you read it aloud or read it to yourself.
Right.
But when you hear the actual call,
It's hard.
that's a whole different story. And if you can't get chills,
Right.
you never will, because it is the best call ever. But it is a great example of the power of sound. and should help you understand why you, as a business operator, should be utilizing sound in your way, unscripted, because there's no way that could be scripted.
Right.
You know, and with your passion to tell your own story, or whoever's story it is, you know, if it's your employees telling their story or whatever, but it should just come from the heart. It should not come from a script. Even if the script comes from the heart, right? If you write a script and then read it, not good.
Right.
None of that. It has to be pure. Tell your story in your words in your way.
I think what you brought up kind of is one of the key parts about sound, is that people can read, but they hear it in their head.
Mm-hmm.
So like how you were saying the Mayday, 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 well, I could read it like Mayday, 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 and just fly through it. So like the important part of not only telling your story, but how you tell it so people can hear you speak about it, that's going to be more powerful than just you writing about how you worked really hard in an About Me section. Convey that you worked really hard, like kind of show that you're a little still tired from putting in all that time into college or your work. Just because people can read it a certain way, and the entire image of your story can be totally different than how you're trying to convey it.
So true, right?
It's the worst feeling ever when someone reads something that you wrote and you're like, no, that was supposed to be kind of more funny and like a sense of humor approach to it, not that as serious as you just read it, and like now you're kind of like offended or ticked off at something. So not only can you tell your story, but you can tell people and how you want them to hear it. Because anytime someone's reading something, they're hearing the voice in their head. It's not just Microsoft Sam reading it off to you. So if you can not only reduce the risk of the person's voice being correct and what you're trying to say, you use your own to just make sure it's 100% accurate. And I think that's huge.
Did you know hearing it is actually proven scientifically, or did you?
No, no.
Yeah, it is.
Oh.
Not that we need science to help us understand what
right.
to us is common sense. We've seen what the power of sound can do in persuasion. We've seen it, we felt it, we lived it.
Yeah.
You know, we don't need science to tell us. You know, people could Google and figure that stuff out,
Right.
but we've seen it.
Well, speaking of like science and sound, I just kind of thought of this, the first way you interact with a baby is they're crying. It's all noise. It's not like they're like, oh, can you wipe my diaper? Or like pointing to it or something like that. They're just screaming because they know something, and you immediately know something's wrong, and it draws you over to it immediately. So it's kind of our first way we even interact with each other is sound.
I've been fascinated in talking to my dog. I was just thinking about it this morning. I'm like, you actually know what I'm talking about.
Like
and
when you
yet
say
you
the
don't
name,
even speak the
the
language.
tail starts going. You say the name, and they're like, oh, he definitely heard me and understands me right now. Or
Well, I can tell my dog now, and he's been part of our family now for a year and a half, and I can tell him to go poo, and he knows what that means.
Right.
Like, no, buddy, got to go poo.
Yeah.
Or I can say, hey, let's go pee. All right, he runs pee. He's like, let's go, and that's the power of sound right there, man.
really
It is great. You know?
One way because we don't have lap cats, but one of them will climb on our lap, and if it's that, it means like if Tilly were to climb on my lap, it means like I'm good. Shayna, you have to do everything. But if Shayna, like that happens to her, she has to go to the bathroom, but she's like loving the fact that Tilly is laying on her lap. So I have to go and shake the treats. So Tilly's like, oh, okay, it's not bad to lay on mom and go run away, but they even use that shaking the treat bag in their commercial for Temptations. That the cat hears it, and you'll hear like running down the stairs, and they're all there. And within like 5 seconds of shaking that bag, and it's sound. It's crazy.
It's awesome. I'm gonna write down. It hasn't been around in a while, but let's see what happens.
Oh.
I don't know if you can even. I have the worst handwriting. I'll try it again. I'm gonna write this down. All right. I just spelled out, in case you can't see it. So Huge. Huge. So now say that word.
Huge.
Right? So the first thing.
Huge.
Yeah.
It's 2 syllables or something.
Yeah.
Because of him.
If you're in Buffalo, you know, you're gonna say, I don't. I don't know the last. That's been a few years since they've been in the market. But yeah, huge. Billy Fusillo. He owned a word.
Yeah.
You know.
Sure did.
And how to say it, because
He owned the way to say it. So
Right.
if you went into it, I actually did this many years ago. I was speaking at a school, and I don't even remember what I was talking to them about. But anyway, I just wrote the word huge on the, it wasn't a chalkboard anymore, whatever the board is that
Yeah.
you have, and all the kids start going, huge. And it's amazing that that guy owned a word just
Yeah.
by repeating that word over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
It was drilled into the memory banks of everybody. And his advertising is where, you know, he's not trying to attract everybody in the market. He tended to attract and go after, you know, bad credit individuals that needed help in getting their financing. And it worked. It worked great, you know.
You write down BAM, people probably will scream it because of Emerald.
I don't even know that as BAM.
Yeah, remember he would BAM when he would throw an ingredient.
You're
in cooking?
talking about a TV show that that
No,
I didn't watch.
Emerald. Like this
Emerald
is like from
Lagasse,
from
right?
the '90s. You don't remember Emerald?
No. Who's Emerald?
He's the guy. He was like a famous celebrity TV chef.
Okay.
And anytime he would add,
I
like,
remember Emerald.
Yeah.
I went to his I went to his restaurant.
Yeah, he would
It was
go,
one of the
"Bam!"
greatest dishes I've ever had. I was in New Orleans. It was a redfish.
You guys-
It
you
was
guys
great.
talked about smell
but
of
yeah,
it.
I didn't watch him. So
Wow, I
don't-
just thought
I
that
don't
would
watch it.
translate all.
Nope, didn't watch it. So swing and a miss.
Hey,
Swing
that's
and a
life.
He had a recent one, I think, with the air fryer. I've seen that a million times with double doors.
Nope.
Interesting. I know what you're talking about, Tim.
Well, thank you.
2 out of 3 is pretty
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, it's passing.
9 out of 10 dentists recommend it. So it's pretty powerful that they said it. So I remember it. You know, you can't rebroadcast transmission of this Major League Baseball game is strictly prohibited without
Yeah,
the
yeah.
express written consent of Major League Baseball.
Yep.
You know, so,
I hear the NFL.
yeah,
Logo
also
with that.
football. I have a story of the power of sound. There's so many.
Yeah.
So, it's the greatest day of our lives, right? I'm in the delivery room with my wife, Cherise, her mother, her sister, the docs, or the doc, okay, no, who was in there? Yeah, yeah, her mother and sister was her first. So, yeah, I'm in the delivery room with Cherise, my wife, her mother, her sister, the doctor, the nurses. It was after a long battle, bam, there she is, my baby Ellie. Ellie is there, right? And Cherise had lost a little bit of blood, so they got to work and they assured me, you know, she's gonna be fine. So next thing I know, Ellie's in my arms, right there, baby, with eye contact, immediate, unconditional love and a bond that will never be broken, right? And there's a lot of noise going, a lot of commotion.
Yeah.
You know, where there's tears, cheers, excitement, first-time parents, first-time grandmother, first-time aunt.
Oh, okay.
But our eyes were still locked. And then there was this sound, a beautiful sound of a mother asking for her baby. I hear Cherise say, "Where's Ellie? I want to hold my baby." And then Ellie unlocks her eyes, and her eyes start going rapidly back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. She recognized that voice. She knew that was her mother. There was a connection. And how could there already be a connection when they've never met and she's less than 30 minutes old?
Yeah.
Well, it was during pregnancy, Cherise talked to Ellie every day. She read her stories, she sang her songs, she conversed with her. So they were actually connected through the power of sound before Ellie was even born.
Yeah.
Powerful.
Yeah, power sound right
Power
there.
of sound.
Yeah.
I mean, kind of to go off that, with my wife being pregnant and going to like a sonogram.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the images, they're like, oh, here's this gray area, that's its arm, and here's its foot, and you're just kind of like, okay, yeah, that looks like a bean-shaped human. And then they like switch the function up, and then they locate the heartbeat, and they like play it for you. And it's like one thing to see it, like the baby up there, and it's like, okay, but then you hear that heartbeat, and it's becomes so much more real than just looking at something on like a monitor. It's like, oh, that is happening right now, and you just you don't think it's like super real when you see the image. I'm saying this again, but when you hear that heartbeat and it's like, it's like you freeze, because that's everything that you've worked hard for, everything that she's going through is right there, and you hear it, and it's just like, how do you not smile? And it's hard to tell this story when people are like, how are the sonograms? It's like, oh, it's great, we saw them, but you can hear the heartbeat. That's like what I always am fixated on, that there's two in there, and they check the one heartbeat, and then you're amazed by that, and then there's the second one, and it's just, it feels so real, and it's hard not to just get so excited because you hear it, you hear them, and you can't wait to hear them when they're here.
It's the power of sound, because there's a connection, an emotional connection to that sound.
Yeah,
and sound creates emotion.
Yeah, it's everything. It helps so much, especially like we were saying, it's best to use sound to tell your story, and I can't ever tell people how my sonograms went without mentioning that heartbeat and hearing that and getting so excited when you hear it.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
It's a really amazing feeling.